How to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea 5-inch gauge locomotive. This is part 53. Marking out the footplate mounting holes, drilling and countersinking the holes for 5BA machine screws in both of the footplates. Before I go any further in this episode, I have to say that I am not following the drawing. Doing it this way, in my opinion, is an improvement on the original design, but the real reason for doing it this way was I could not get the steel angle. Blackgates were out of stock of it. As I showed in a previous episode, I'm using square steel bar, which is a lot stronger and in my opinion easier to fit. In the previous episode I showed the mounting of these steel bars to the main locomotive chassis. All I have to do now is position one of the footplates on the mounting bars and then mark out the positions to drill holes in the footplate so that I can bolt them into threaded holes that I'll be making at various positions in both of the steel bars. In this video I'm just doing one side. This side is different to the other because it has the reverser stand in place, which currently is still a little bit on the high side, and I need to remove it to make some modifications. But I'm not removing the reverser stand mounting bracket just yet, because with it in place it supports the footplate while I mark it out. Once again, as I've just mentioned, I am not following the drawing. The only thing that is important is that the holes that I drill in the mounting bars do not coincide with the holes through the mounting bars where they bolt to the chassis. I marked out the first footplate and then clamped it to the second one, so now when I drill holes in this, they will be duplicated in the second footplate. I'm using a centre drill and I really am making sure that the point of the centre drill is on the cross that's marked on the steel. I want these holes to be accurate. Not that they're particularly visible, but that's not the point. I need them to be accurate, and both footplates need to be exactly the same. Okay, so this is rudimentary stuff, but you would be surprised how many steam engines I work on where the hole drilling is diabolical. The secret is measure twice and mark out once, and then drill the hole on the mark that you've made, and theoretically all should be well. The hole diameter is 1/8 of an inch, which is clearance size for 5BA. After the drilling, now comes the countersinking part of the operation. This is very important. If the countersink is too shallow, then the heads of the countersunk machine screws that I'm going to use will stick up and look unsightly. The depth of the countersink in the pieces of steel plate need to be exactly the same on every one of the holes. To get this right, I'm using a depth stop on the drilling machine, so they are all the same depth. This was the first test, and as you can see, the countersink is above the depth of the hole. Back to the drilling machine, readjust the depth stop on the drilling machine, and now all of the countersinks will be a little bit deeper. I'm mainly showing the drilling and countersinking operations on the piece of footplate that are marked out, but do bear in mind I also had to do the other side, being very careful to countersink the holes at the right side. It is so easy to get it wrong. All you need is a momentary lapse of concentration. The next part of the job is something I should have done in a previous episode. On the reversing stand side, I forgot to drill 2 holes either side of it, which holds a piece of steel bar to the chassis. Never mind though, because the reversing stand support had to be removed because it's still a little bit too high. Before I refit the stand, I will give it a bit of therapy. The next part of the job is critical. I refitted the reverser stand after modifying it, and now it's in the right position. I marked through the holes in the footplate with a felt tip pen. Now both of the steel bar supports have a selection of black felt tip pen dots on them. I would like to say that I should really use a centre drill for this, but here I'm showing that you don't necessarily always have to use a centre drill if you've had plenty of experience of drilling holes in bits of metal. With a bit of practice and a bit of patience, it is possible to get the twist drill to go where you want it to go and not where it wants to go. This is a 2.6mm twist drill, and according to my chart, that is tapping size for 5BA. This is a very small twist drill, so you have to be really careful not to snap it off in the hole, which would be disastrous really. I would have to start again. During the drilling operation, It's very important to withdraw the twist drill from the hole momentarily, very frequently. This will clear all of the chippings which otherwise would cause the drill to break. Here I'm unbolting the front support from the buffer beam, complete with its 2 felt tip pen marks. One of the felt tip pen marks is slightly smaller than the other, and I really hope it's in the right place. This is some metal working spray that I use frequently for various jobs. I've squirted some of this into a plastic box on the bench, and what I'm going to do is dip my tap into this to lubricate the tap, which makes it easier to thread the holes. This small tap is a taper tap, and the idea of this is it makes it easier to go into the hole. But in reality, I found the second tap that I used, which was also a second tap, less tapered, cut much better. Tapping holes in pieces of metal by hand is quite difficult, particularly if the tap is as small as this one, and with very little provocation it will snap off, leaving quite a lot of it inside the hole, which would definitely not be a good thing. I took my time with this job and it was successful. Now it's time to go into the outer part of the workshop and deburr both of the steel bars using the belt sander. Now these parts need painting, first of all with self-etch primer. If I don't paint them, they will quickly go rusty and look unsightly. I also want to paint the inside edge that is in contact with the chassis. I'm turning them over, they're only supported by the edges of the plastic box, which will leave a mark, but it's really not important on these parts because once they're fixed to the chassis, I will give them another coat of paint anyway, to coat the mounting bolts with paint and fill any gaps between the bars and the chassis itself. This is the stuff I normally use, Autopaint Northern Self-Etch Primer, and while the primer was drying, I went into the main workshop and gave the chassis a coat of paint in the area where I've been working. Steam engines emit a lot of water, and water and steel and cast iron don't agree with each other, so it's always a good idea to paint important areas that are going to get wet, like these. In my opinion, it is very important to take into consideration future maintenance. I allowed sufficient time for the etch primer to dry, and here I'm spraying the parts with some matte black paint. Try not to get too excited, this is the final shot, and it's of course some paint drying. That's it from me, stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists, and by doing that you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists you can actually watch the videos back to back.